This is you. You live in the Caribbean where it's sunny all year round, where the UV index is sometimes 10 and over. So protect yourself from those harmful UV rays any way you can. Ozone protection is a big deal. So look to our government's ozone unit for information on UV rays and ozone-friendly appliances for your home. Any of these appliances containing HCFCs or CFCs are now banned in Trinidad and Tobago. As well, any appliance being serviced by technicians should not be vented. This is part of a global effort to save the ozone layer and stem the advance of global warming. Visit our website for information on what you can do to help, training for refrigeration technicians, and much more. Every action counts, and we are counting on you to do your part.
The sound of Baron there, Mother Earth is crying, and you better stop the polluting. I tell you, we played music dealing with the topic today. We're discussing World Environment Day. It's coming up on June 7th, and we are just giving you information as we get closer and closer to it. But I want to welcome this morning to discuss the ozone, Dr. Marissa Gowrie and Mr. Jonathan Bolai. Dr. Marissa Gowrie is the Deputy Environmental Manager, and Mr. Bolai is an ozone specialist, and they both work at the Environmental Policy and Planning Division of the Ministry of Planning and Development. Good morning and welcome to the Now Morning Show.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
No problem. So, where do we start? We're discussing the ozone, right? Now, I understand that the ozone is a gas, as well as there's the ozone layer that everybody, we talk about the ozone layer breaking down and all that. But before we get into that, Dr. Gowrie, what is ozone exactly?
Okay, so good morning once again, and good morning to the viewers. So just to give a little perspective on what the ozone layer is all about, as you mentioned, it is a gas. So it is a layer made up of these gas molecules that's found up in the atmosphere, and it actually surrounds our entire Earth, and it allows life on Earth to thrive on Earth. Now, the layer itself is around 3 to 4 millimeters thick. Oh, wow. So you can appreciate how very fragile it is. Yeah. But it performs a very important function in that it filters UV rays that's coming from the sun. Now, if left unfiltered, UV rays can cause things like skin cancer, increase eye cataracts, weaken our immune system, and affect agricultural yield. So it has a lot of negative effects to life on Earth if it comes down unfiltered. So this ozone layer is really what allows life on Earth to flourish.
That's very interesting. So then, all right. So Jonathan, you are the ozone specialist, right? Tell me something. Does the ozone renew itself at all, or this 3 to 4 millimeters that we have since the beginning of time is all that we have of the ozone?
Actually, since we've signed on to it, the global community has done its part, and we have actually been seeing healing or recovery of the ozone through this collective action of reducing the amount of gases that come into different countries, or come into our country actually.
Okay, so then let's go back a little bit then. When we started to mess it up, what did we do to mess it up in the first place?
Okay, so to provide a little context, back in 1989, Trinidad and Tobago, amongst other nations, would have signed on to this convention. And basically, we agreed to phase down these chemicals that break down the ozone layer. Now, back in the late 1980s, scientists realized that certain gases, such as CFCs, were being emitted by man and thus damaging this ozone layer.
Right. Okay. And then so there's certain gases that damage it. It's Correct. A gas that can be damaged by other gases.
Yes.
Yeah. And Dr. Gowrie, what is being done? I mean, besides that signing on, is that an international thing or is that a local thing?
Yeah, so as Jonathan would have mentioned, in the 1980s, there was this issue where this hole was found in the ozone layer, and the hole is found in the polar regions most predominantly because of the fact that there's a very cold cloud that forms there called the polar vortex. And on the surface of these clouds, these chemicals that Jonathan would have mentioned, such as the CFCs that man was putting up into the atmosphere, was coming into contact with the ozone molecules, the gas that makes up the layer, and causing it to break apart. So that when this was realized in the 1980s, the global community came together, and the Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer and its Montreal Protocol was signed by countries around the world Trinidad and Tobago signed on to it in 1989, as Jonathan mentioned. And as a global community, we have been doing a part and taking steps to reduce the amount of these gases that are let out into the atmosphere. Now, Jonathan mentioned CFCs, and if you remember, many years ago, there were lots of campaigns about being ozone friendly and ensuring that you don't use CFCs. Back then, CFCs were found a lot in aerosol cans, so that deodorants and these sorts of things had CFCs as the propellant that would cause the chemical to come out of the can.
Right.
So there was a lot of activity going on in that sector to phase out CFCs. Another sector where it's predominantly found now even is in the refrigeration and air conditioning sector. So that you would find that the globe and Trinidad and Tobago has been doing a lot of work to phase out these chemicals, these refrigerant gases that are used in this sector. I would also like to mention that there's some other sectors where you have these gases found, because you have the fumigation sector, you have something called methyl bromide, that is a chemical that controls pests. And it's very important in terms of trade, so we don't trade pests from one country to the next. That has been phased out since 2015 in Trinidad for everything in fumigation with respect to electrical fumigation, soil fumigation, and structural fumigation. Also, it used to be found in a gas, the halon is another gas in the firefighting sector that also ozone depleting, and that has also been phased out as well. So now we have the alternatives that we promote, but we're still doing a lot of work in the refrigeration and air conditioning sector.
So these sectors still play a part in terms of they contribute to, is it CFC that they're using still, or is it just another gas that's also dangerous?
So CFCs has actually been phased out since 2008, the 1st of January
completely
2000. Yeah, we no longer import CFCs, and it has been, it's no longer used in this sector predominantly. Now, I should mention that so these gases were, as we call them, wonder gases. They were cheap, they were versatile, so that is why you would have found it used so widely in the globe. So of course, coming up with replacements for them has been quite the challenge for the international industrial community. So from CFCs, we moved to another gas called HCFCs, which is just a big word, hydrochlorofluorocarbons. That's what CFC stands for, chlorofluorocarbons.
Okay.
And that HCFC gas, and we know it in the sector as R22, that has also been phased out in terms of equipment that use that gas being brought in. The gas itself is still allowed to some level. Some companies have quotas that you can bring in a certain amount to facilitate servicing, because there still are equipment in the country that use R22. But we are promoting alternative gases and equipment that use alternative gases to get rid of the R22 gas as we move along.
So is there constant work being done, Jonathan, on the ozone in terms of studying it to see how these new gases may affect it differently as we go forward? Because I know that, I mean, initially I don't think anybody was thinking, well, let's use some CFC so that we can mess up the ozone, as a accident, as a byproduct of using it. But the new gases, are they being tested in advance, or is it that we're going to see how it affects the ozone?
So as Dr. Corey would have rightly mentioned, we have been transitioning. Right now, we are currently phasing out these hydrochlorofluorocarbons and introducing now alternatives that are not ozone depleting, which are called hydrochlorofluorocarbons, or HFCs. Many in the sector would know it as R410A or R134A. And these gases are currently on the market right now and being used within the air conditioning refrigeration sector.
But these are the ones that we're saying these are definitely good for the ozone. They don't affect the ozone negatively.
These are good for the ozone, yes. But
all right.
Yes.
You was going with a butt there, no? I see the butt coming.
Okay, to be so in 2019, Trinidad and Tobago also signed on to or amended the Montreal Protocol. It's called the Kigali Amendment, and what this aims to do is phase down these gases that are not ozone depleting, but have what we call a high global warming potential, or has a climate change impact. These gases, when within a closed loop system, they don't affect the atmosphere, but when they are leaked, they tend to damage and warm the planet and attribute to climate change.
Okay. So before we go, guys, Dr. Gowrie, can you tell us what can we do on an individual level to help with this ozone? To make sure that we keep the ozone as safe as possible. I know all these nice big fancy numbers on R this and R22 and R140 this and all of those things are fantastic for industry people who are working in the industry. But what about us, the common people who may not be working in that particular field but want to do our part to make sure that we help not destroy the ozone layer?
That's a very good question. And, there's a saying that we say in the ozone family that when it comes to saving the ozone layer, every action counts. So certainly as citizens of this country, you can do things on your own to help the cause. So one of the things that you can definitely do is when you're purchasing equipment. So we mentioned air conditioning and refrigeration, and everybody has, most people would have a refrigerator in their home, an air conditioning unit in their home. They would maybe drive a vehicle, and that would have an air conditioning system in it. So you always try to ensure that whatever equipment that you're purchasing uses refrigerant that's both ozone and climate friendly, or at the very least for the ozone layer, ozone friendly. Because as I mentioned, so in terms of, Jonathan would have mentioned that these gases that are ozone friendly, the HFCs, so R134A, when you go home, if you open your fridge, there's a little plate on the inside of your fridge, and you would see R134A written on the plate. It has information on the actual device. So when you're shopping around for equipment, you check those labels to see what refrigerant it uses. And you can inquire from your salesperson, etc., in terms of, which units are better in terms of more environmentally friendly. We've also started a program called the Professional Certification Program for Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Technicians. And we very much encourage that when you're doing servicing of your equipment, and of course, servicing also helps to ensure the equipment is maintained properly so that it also functions as it's supposed to. But also the technicians that come into your home, that they service it in a way that they employ good refrigeration practices. Jonathan would have mentioned that the gases within the system are not harmful, but if it is we call it venting or let out into the air, that is when it becomes harmful, because then it goes up into the atmosphere and comes into contact with the ozone layer. So ensuring that your technician is properly trained, is professionally certified, is something that you can do as an average citizen to ensure that, how the equipment is being maintained is in a manner that is safe for the ozone layer.
Well, this is fantastic, guys. I want to thank both of you for joining us this morning and sharing this information. Dr. Marissa Gowrie, Deputy Environmental Manager, and Mr. Jonathan Bolai, Ozone Specialist, both working at the Environmental Policy and Planning Division in the Ministry of Planning and Development. Thank you guys so much for joining us and teaching us about the ozone and how we can help to protect it. We take that quick break and come back with more inside the Now Morning Show. Stay tuned. Take care, guys. Enjoy the day.
Thank you. Same to you. Hope we had some information there that was of use.
Very much so. Very much so.
All right. Keep safe. Bye.
You too. Take care.
Day On Now is brought to you by the Ministry of Planning and Development and the United Nations Development Programme.